Hello, how are you doing? Welcome back to the channel. 2 videos in one day. We're doubling up today. I did a video earlier about Max Mayling's re-signing for Bristol Bears from the start of next season, but I'm doing another video now to talk about Worcester Warriors again. This is going to be the 3rd video on the channel, which is about Worcester and their current situation, but it is a situation which keeps developing. There's been some quite significant developments today, particularly for the players and all the staff at the club. Unfortunately, it's not good news, but in this video, I get into all of that. If you're new here, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and also comment down below. Just give me your thoughts on this whole situation involving Worcester. There's so much to unpack. And perhaps your thoughts on what English domestic rugby needs to learn from this whole instance. So let's get into it. Okay, so I mentioned that there has been developments today. Essentially, the news, which many of you might have seen already, is that WRFC Players Limited, which is the company which essentially holds the contracts for the players and everyone at the club, has been put into liquidation. It's been wound up, which means that those players and staff have had their contracts terminated. So I suppose the first thing to say in all of this is our thoughts are with those people and with those families who are now out of work and out of jobs and all the uncertainty that comes with that. But it is quite a strange situation. It's almost developing into more than just a rugby story now. It's a kind of financial story. It's a business story as well. So I can't profess to have the absolute expertise on what happens in liquidation and administration and winding up at the High Court and that sort of thing. But I'll try and give kind of an overview of what's happening at the moment and what it kind of means for Worcester and for those players. So as of today, those players are now free agents. There's another winding up petition against WRFC Trading Limited. So the one I said before was WRFC Players Limited, which has gone into liquidation. There's another winding up petition against WRFC Trading Limited. That remains in administration. That's kind of still in administration. That hasn't been liquidated today, but that is the company that then owns the ground and everything else. So the players were separate to the company that owns the ground, essentially. Now, it's understood that Warriors could now have their suspension by the RFU in the Premiership and other competitions extended until the end of the season. The RFU have come out with their own statement, which I think suggested that wasn't the case just yet. It could happen, but they do have a small period of time, whether it's the next few days or a week or so, to see if buyers can be found to take up the debts, have an agreement with HMRC and move the club forward still as a professional rugby club. We'll wait and see if that does happen. I know the Times was reporting today that there are a couple of different investor groups that have been in conversations with the administrators and with HMRC, so we'll see if any of that does kind of bear fruit in the end, but that's worth being aware of. If a buyer is found by the middle of this month, they could still play in the Premiership for the rest of the season, I believe, but we can now expect them to be relegated back down to the Championship. But even that isn't 100% certain. Again, the RFU came out of their statement. Usually in this sort of situation with the club being liquidated, they would be relegated from the league. They would go down into the Championship after hitting administration. I believe the administrators have put in a request for that not to be the case, for them not to get relegated if a new buyer was found and they could continue in the league and so on and so forth. But a decision's yet to be made on that, basically. So that's something to keep an eye on. Ongoing situation. Now, as part of this as well, there is the very real possibility that if new owners are found, or even if they're not, that Worcester as a club could lose their status as one of England's elite clubs. At the moment, they're one of the 13 Premiership clubs. They're one of the 13 elite clubs in the country, which comes with all sorts of funding and things like that. And I'll try and explain it as best to the best of my knowledge now. So essentially, every Premiership club has a P share. Now, a P share is basically shares to the Premiership. All the clubs are shareholders, which you might remember when Queen Elizabeth II passed away. The part of the reason that rugby took so long to make a decision on whether games would go ahead that weekend is because for a decision like that, they had to have a conversation amongst all 13 clubs, amongst all 13 shareholders. So Worcester own a percentage of the Premiership. They are shareholders in it. And that's really, really important because that helps them keep their status as one of England's elite rugby clubs. There is the suggestion, and there are reports today, that because if the club is liquidated, if they don't continue to exist in the way that they have done in recent years, then that P share could be up for grabs. That percentage could be bought out potentially by Premiership Rugby. I saw some suggestions as well, even whether it could be offered to HMRC, who are owed a lot of money, £15 million, I think the debt to HMRC, whether it could be used towards that. So various different complicated financial issues. But the bottom line of it is that P share could be bought out by Premiership Rugby, which would be really bad news for Worcester Warriors, because then they would lose access to central funding. So I believe it's about £4 million a year in central funding that they currently receive as part of being one of those elite rugby clubs. And just to give a comparison, the Championship clubs, so for example, a Doncaster Knights, just to pick a team at random, who aren't part of that elite branch of clubs, the funding they receive from the RFU whilst playing the Championship is about £200,000. So it's a massive reduction in the amount that they would earn, that they would be able to put into the infrastructure of the club and all that sort of thing. So it would essentially be one of perhaps the final death nail in the coffin of Worcester Warriors as the Premiership club, as the elite level club that we currently have at the moment. Now, there has been today quite a lot on social media. Those of you that might have seen bits on Instagram or particularly Twitter, with people saying that it's really important the P share doesn't get sold by Premiership Rugby, the players coming out and more's being said in the news now. And I think through all of this thing, whatever happens with Worcester, I feel like at this point, whether buyers can be found in time, we'll wait and see. There's been so many rumours for so long, empty promises, false hopes, false dawns, that sort of thing, that it really is a case of let's just wait and see what happens with them. But as the players have started to hint towards, both Premiership Rugby and the RFU and rugby as a whole need to look at this situation to try and make sure it doesn't happen again. John Dobson, the Stormers coach in the URC, was very interesting when speaking about this, in that the Stormers, who won the URC last year and are still in administration, when they went into administration, they essentially got helped out by South African Rugby Union. Now, it's not a like-for-like comparison because the structures are so different and there's reasons that the clubs are punished so severely in England for entering administration because it tries to a deterrent to stop players, to stop teams just spending and trying to spend their way to success and know that they have that fallback, that they'll be propped up by the union. So there are reasons in place for why clubs in England, such as Worcester, are finding out at the moment, can be punished so badly. But this has put a spotlight on the whole structure of the game, which I have spoken about in other videos. I would be a big fan of 2 divisions of 8. I think that would perhaps make more sense because you'd still have a really good, really competitive Premiership, and you would also have a much more competitive Championship, which hopefully would then get a proper TV deal and so on and so forth. But we'll wait and see whether any of that is going to happen. But I think there needs to be discussions amongst the RFU and Premiership as well for their directors test, which currently goes through the RFU. That doesn't even go through the Premiership, which if you think about it is incredibly bizarre. You have Premiership Rugby who don't have their own directors test for new owners coming in. And clearly the Worcester owners, many of you would have seen the ridiculous statement they came out with over the weekend, which kind of said sorry, but then blamed the fans a bit for not turning up as much and blame players for not taking pay cuts. Ridiculous statement. So we shall see. I think that needs to be looked at. I think the structure of the game needs to be looked at, which I have spoken about before, so I won't go into too much more detail now, but hopefully this has given you some sort of overview of kind of what's happening, the latest with Worcester. And as I said at the start of the video, I guess thoughts are just with the families, with the players, with the staff who no longer have jobs. We'll wait and see where the players end up. We saw 4 players yesterday actually join Bath on loan. They're now free agents with Worcester, so whether they turn into permanent deals, quite how that works, I'm not too sure. We'll wait and see. But as I said at the top of the video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and drop a comment down below. I'll see you in the next one.